welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to explore the intersection of entertainment, data, and brand performance, which is like a critical and timely topic in this ever-evolving media landscape. Our panel brings together two brilliant industry leaders who are shaping discussion on celebrity, entertainment, and data-driven decision-making in Hollywood and beyond. Our panelists joining us today are Chris Massey, Executive Vice President of Global Data Strategy and Transformation at Universal Pictures, and Laurie Brookins, freelance reporter for The Hollywood Reporter. Thank you both for joining me. We are really honored to have you both, and I'm excited to dive into today's conversation.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Laurie, maybe if you don't mind, we'll start with you. We've been seeing a fascinating shift in recent years where celebrity seems to have reclaimed the spotlight from influencers, often finding more authentic ways, and it is a very important topic, to connect with consumers. Sometimes, I would say, beyond their cinematic roles. What do you think really drives this evolution? How has the shift come about? And what, in your opinion, are the factors that have contributed to celebrities reaching consumers in such a genuine and, I would say, more impactful way compared to influencers?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I think that historically, the first thing to remember is that celebrities were the original influencers. If you go back, I did a little bit of research in this. Lucille Ball was doing cigarette ads in the 1950s, which of course today seems utterly appalling. And she was far from alone in that. At the same time, you look at, Joan Crawford, one of her husbands was the CEO of Pepsi. And so Joan, once she married, his name was Alfred Steele, once they got married, Joan became the de facto spokesperson for Pepsi. And every interview she did, there was a bottle of Pepsi sitting in front of her. So if that's not influence, I don't know what is. I think at a certain point, celebrities sort of en masse decided that, doing these types of endorsements didn't feel authentic. It was decidedly uncool. They moved away from it. And then at a certain point, you mainly had companies outside the US start throwing lots of money at celebrities to say, hey, if you do this ad campaign, it will never show in the US and we'll pay you lots of money. It's kind of the beginning premise of Bill Murray in being in Japan in Lost in Translation. But another good example, I think that's very current is George Clooney for several years did Nespresso commercials outside the US, and now of course we see George Clooney in the US in Nespresso commercials all the time. I think that's also because, with this shift and with the growing influencer market, the acceptance of celebrities doing these types of campaigns and embracing products became more accepted. And so that began to grow once again. And so this sort of duality of, celebrities endorsing products while at the same time building their own brands, their personal brands as entrepreneurs just really took off. What's key to that, and is certainly different from, again, Lucy doing the cigarette ad, is that celebrities, for the most part, are very careful about how they build their entrepreneurial wheelhouse. You have Drew Barrymore, it's about cruelty-free makeup. John Bon Jovi, has a wine brand. They feel extremely authentic to the personas of these people. And I think that that's key to their success. And so, that authenticity combined with the, regardless of how you might feel about it, the inherent credibility of a celebrity, people, they come into your homes, they're on your televisions, you see them on a movie screen, you feel like you know them. And so that builds a credibility so that when they've built their own brand or they're endorsing a product, it is extremely easy for a consumer to say, okay, yeah, she uses it, or she made that, Selena Gomez is another, fantastic example. That's something she feels passionately about it. I love Selena Gomez, so I'm going to buy that. And it's so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, so basically you mentioned authenticity, like credibility. Chris, how do we move from creativity to value? And what is your thought about what kind of value talent can bring within like, a promotional machine like entertainment? How have you seen talent impact marketing effort and decision, and particularly when it comes to promotional campaigns for new releases, for example?
Yeah. Well, hey, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I think I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Laurie was just saying. There's nothing new about celebrity and the idea of talent. And, Universal Pictures, we're a 100-plus-year-old company. We've been working with talent for a very long time. And it's one of our kind of core pillars is to build relationship with, pioneering talent, both in front of and behind the camera. So talent has always been extremely important for us. I think with the onset of social media, I think we're talking about in the previous session, obviously the use of mobile and the way that the digital landscape has kind of grown and fragmented. Never before has it been, I think, an opportunity within the marketing to take our talent and content, containing our talent, and use it to help effectively promote the movie. They are huge platforms, especially on movies like Wicked, which we could talk a bit about, to build awareness, interest, and engagement in the movie and the brand itself. But I do think that we have to collaborate with talent in meaningful and robust ways. And again, as Laurie said, I think authenticity is extremely important for them. That we're asking them to do things that make sense with their brand and their goal and their entrepreneurial, positioning. It has to be compelling. And I think if you take some of the content formats and tactics that maybe were done 10 or 20 years ago, that a lot of those have been adapted and evolved and refreshed for a digital and a social age. So we have to be authentic. We have to be compelling. We have to be relevant. And I don't mean just memorable. I mean, are we helping promote a movie here? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're in the business of doing. And a successful movie is good for us and it's good for our talent. So are we effectively communicating in our marketing? Are we relevant to the movie? And then I think the final thing, which is really, I think, a bit of a superpower of the film studios, and I think in particular Universal, we need to be kind of in sync. We need to be integrated, and that the moments that we create with our talent to promote our movies should be part of a much bigger orchestrated event. And we call these things combustible moments. And we will layer our advertising and broader social media. We'll layer events and executions with our exhibitor partners, tactics that we can do with the local theatres, and all of these things will come together around a moment. And more often than not, the talent piece sits at the very top of that kind of pyramid, and it's the thing that ultimately helps us cut through in what is obviously a very noisy and chaotic environment in social media. So it's an intrinsic part, Michael, to your question, of the marketing, and continues to evolve to kind of find new ways to compel and drive people to the movie theaters.
And it's clear on the value. I mean, I would like to come back to this combustible moment, But if we just focus on the AI and data-driven analytics, Chris, like I know that it's part of your focus, your role. So, I mean, how do we maintain the creative balance? I mean, because
Good question.
for instance, they are creative work, right? and they cannot be fully driven by algorithm. And I guess that in this combustible moment, as
sure.
like data still plays a crucial role, right? Because
it's again, it's a fully embedded
that? How do you
part of what we do. Yeah. I think, I mean, the first thing to say is that my focus is much more on how we can use AI and generative AI, machine learning, more established forms of AI to generate insight. I'm not involved in content creation, content generation, any of the creative elements. There's a whole other group of people who are very carefully and delicately navigating that space. I'm lucky. My role is to just go and figure out how do we, address questions and provide insights to the business. So one of the ways in which we think about analytics is there's essentially, for everybody on the call who's not aware, there's basically 4 types of analytics that you can do. And it's often dictated by the level of data that you have and maybe your capability with data. The very kind of beginning stage or the foundation of analytics is what we call descriptive analytics. You're simply describing what you see. You don't know necessarily what's important. You're just trying to observe and understand what's happening in the real world in real time. Second stage is called diagnostics or diagnostic analytics. In that world, you're using data to understand why things are happening. You're just able to explain why did X happen as a result of doing Y. Okay, so that's diagnostics. The third stage is predictive analytics, where you're now using your data, your metrics, what we call your leading indicators to project forward to a future point in time. That could be predicting the box office of a movie's opening weekend. Final stage, it's called prescriptive analytics. So not only are we now predicting, but we're also making kind of recommendations on what to do with the marketing or the distribution of a movie to elevate its potential performance. So we're trying to take control of the wheel and actually steer the business in a potentially different direction. When it comes to creative use cases, creative areas of development, we are principally focused on descriptive and diagnostics. So we are providing creative leaders in the business guardrails for how they might assess the effectiveness of their materials, the effectiveness of the content. We're not prescribing you should do this with a character, you should do this with a trailer asset. We're simply providing metrics that can help frame a conversation. And I think for the creative groups, it comes back to they can use this data in I think a few different ways. The first one is we validate a hypothesis, right? We validate something that maybe they already knew. And validation is good in a really complicated world. So we like validation. The second thing is
examples about that?
Yeah, please.
Do you have some example about like this first
step?
step?
Validation. All the time. We were pretty confident. We just had a movie open this weekend called Dogman. It's based on a really successful kids book. The movie did really well. We're very pleased with its performance. We were pretty confident it was going to do pretty well because we could see that there was a really powerful, fan base of kids and parents who love this brand, who love this franchise. And so we were telling the business, we can see there's real kind of performance opportunity here. We can see these audiences are really engaging with this movie before it's over. And they're like, well, yeah, we know that because it's Dogman. It's got this amazing legacy, this amazing franchise. So we're validating. But if we turn around and said, actually, they're not engaging in the way that you think, then I'd say, well, we're informing them of something they didn't know. And so the marketing group might pivot in a different direction and prioritize different messaging or different advertising tactics to reach that audience. So validation is good. It's even better when you can help the business identify something it didn't previously know. So you're kind of informing them of something new. And the marketing group, as an example, might take that and think, okay, we're going to change our messaging. We're going to do something different. They've decided to do that, right? They've made that decision. The final thing that kind of diagnostics can do is create an opposing force, right? So if you think that a lot of analytics is based on historic data, and often it's giving you the most likely average scenario for a movie or a campaign or a tactic that you might be doing. And if you go to the business and you say, this is the most likely thing that's going to happen, the business might turn around and say, well, that's very average. We don't want to be the average. We want to be exceptional. So by giving them and holding up a mirror and saying, historically, this is the norm, we can actually intentionally divert and take different approaches to be disruptive, to be unexpected, and to break through. So I manage, that's my kind of my ace card, because I managed to play that card. I'm like, just because I'm telling you this is probably what the model says you should do, that might be the reason why you don't do this, because that's the type of creatively driven organization we are.
Okay, this is super clear. Thank you. Laurie, I think that if we stay on the connection between like the data and the entertainment, I think that at the end of the day, it all end the same way, like entertainment with awards and data and AI with scoring, right? So in collaboration with the Hollywood Reporter, we've been developing exclusive awards, so like ranking to determine who really truly won the red carpet. In fact, we've recently released data for the Golden Globes, where team is sharing also a link in the chat box, and we will have even more to come soon for the other shows. But thanks to these partnerships, and given your extensive experience covering the red carpet, how did your perspective shifted now that you have access to the data? Did it change something? Like, how did brand responded to this insight as they assess the effectiveness of all the effort they've been doing? What is the
I would say my perspective has definitely evolved. I have loved working on Red Carpet Power Rankings, which is a series we started just last year. It's been a terrific partnership. I mean, you guys had the data, we had the red carpet access, and it just seemed like a perfect opportunity to quantify these placements that are so high profile that everybody's talking about, the Monday morning after an awards show. Did you see what Nicole Kidman was wearing? Did you see what Zendaya was wearing? And it's great to have those conversations, and it's great to see those conversations happening on social media and elsewhere. But there was just always this itch to sort of say, okay, well, what's the impact? Can we quantify it in some way? And so this partnership has really given us the opportunity to do that. To be able to apply a number to Zendaya wearing Louis Vuitton at the Golden Globes. I think it's valuable for us. I think readers find it fascinating. The thing I kind of didn't expect, but I'm thrilled about, is that the brands are really paying attention. They are enjoying these results. They are asking me when we're going to post them. I've had the brands tell me that they've been internal conversations in their offices, not just that we're doing it, but look at our numbers versus look at their numbers. And, every brand has their own red carpet strategy. And it's obvious, what that strategy is when I start getting the dressing releases for an event. And you can see that, one brand has, dressed 10 celebrities. One brand has dressed 2. Another brand has gone all in with, one actress. And, she wears them faithfully throughout the award season. These are all very much red carpet strategies that are discussed internally, because every brand wants to make sure that they are aligning themselves with somebody who's going to, work well for them. And so to see those numbers is really just to see whether or not those plans are succeeding. And I think that's why it's important.
And is there any data that did surprise you compared to what you were expecting?
I think the data that tends to surprise me, I and members of the Launchmetrics team, we have these conversations throughout the award season, before a show, after a show, and we came up with this with a word that we're all freely using now, unicorns. And the unicorns in the process of tracking the results from an awards show, it's when somebody when a brand is a surprise that just comes out of nowhere. In talking about we've got the results from the Grammys that Launchmetrics is working on as we speak. We'll get those results later this week and post them to thr.com. So I reached out to the team yesterday and said, okay, Lady Gaga wore Samuel Lewis, which is not like an expected name on a red carpet. So can you guys, make sure that you track Samuel Lewis as well? Because the combination of Lady Gaga in a Samuel Lewis gown, let's see if that, if that causes that brand to pop in the results. Let's see. I know that, last year, I'm pretty sure it was the Grammys. Last year, Blue Ivy Carter joined Beyonce on stage and wore some Lerude boots. And those boots, and literally the only person to wear them at that event, and those boots popped in the results. And that is a testament to the power of the celebrity of the entire family, basically. So it was really, I'm delighted by those surprises. We should have those surprises because honestly, if you see the same, 5 to 8 names at everything, at every show through the season, it might get a bit boring.
Yeah, of course. Well, you just mentioned the Grammys and the surprises. What is not a surprise, like really, and well, what I would like to discuss now is the impact of the wildfires on the industry.
Yeah.
Because in fact it's the first major event to take place since, right? So we are not finalized with the data. We are going to release it together. But in anticipation, our team looked like into the first 48 hours of the event to see just how it performed and how this impacted the result. And we found that altogether, the result increased year over year by 15%, very close to 900 million in media impact value, which is our KPI to measure the impact of it. But we also found that many stars were wearing blue pins to raise awareness to the relief funds. And well, by talent doing so, they brought $10 million in media exposure to the fund. And it seemed that the industry was more supportive than ever in making this a success for the right cause. What are your thoughts on the most recent award show in the current context?
Well, first, the entire situation was just unprecedented. It's tragic for so many reasons. And, people really had so many questions about whether or not the awards shows could proceed. I think, I ended up doing a story for Hollywood Reporter that really only addressed the idea of, if we cancel everything out of respect, which is certainly an understandable way to feel, but if we cancel everything out of respect, we are at the same time putting in a lot of people out of work precisely at the time that they need to be working, and which is also their busiest time of year. Like all of the creatives, all of the behind the scenes people, the makeup artists, the hairstylists, the stylists, who work with the stars. But that's also, the red carpet photographers, the caterers, the valets. I mean, when we started working on this story, we kind of created this spider web, and it's incredible to think of just like how many people would have been impacted if somebody had decided, what, we're just going to skip all awards shows for the first 3 months of the year. It was just an untenable situation. I think the Grammys did an outstanding job of balancing paying tribute to everybody who is still suffering, highlighting those stories for people. I thought the commercials that they did that highlighted local businesses was masterful and amazing. And then, to go to the heart pins, the other thing I was just so delighted about, it's not like the heart pins were being blasted everywhere. And that it was just really being, commercialized and discussed. And, you know, it felt like a very organic response to people noticing the heart pins, going and finding out information about the heart pins, and then, choosing to donate. So that organic effort, I think, is just, it was really wonderful to see. So, I think as we continue to move forward through the award season, Critics' Choice Awards is this Friday. SAG Awards are more toward the end of the month, and we'll wrap up with Oscars March 2nd. I think that hopefully as people continue to heal, they start to rebuild. An incredible fundraising mechanism is in place to help people. Ultimately, I think just the Grammys did it in absolutely the right way, and I hope other award shows take lessons from it.
Yes, thank you for this. This is like really enlightening. Thank you for that. Chris, I would like to come back with you on a topic that we just mentioned with Laurie, which is like the connection between the brand and the industry. Like our core business as Launchmetrics, as you know, is fashion, lifestyle, and beauty industry, and much like the film industry, like the competition here is like intense, and failure isn't an option. So, and especially with like the increased amount and investment that are involved, like a flop can really deeply impact the business. So every moment needs to be maximized for success. And given this context, what are the strategies that do you think are key to succeeding in such a, I would say, a high pressure environment? And what are the best practices that you find to be like the most effective? And somehow my question is like, what can the fashion, luxury, and beauty industry learn from the world of entertainment?
So we release in the region of 20 plus movies a year, depending on the country. We're in 65 territories around the world. Our top 20 territories do the lion's share of the revenue, as you can imagine. And so at any given weekend, somewhere in the world, we're taking a swing with a movie, and it's a constant flywheel. So certainly over the years, I've previously worked in digital marketing. Now I work in kind of data and AI and analytics. One of the things that's been crucial in that journey is, and we spoke about it briefly earlier, but understanding the role of data, and that we can absolutely use data to inform the direction that we're going in, or do we think we're going to open the movie to the level that we need to? But equally, the world is such a volatile place, and it's always been a volatile place, really. We can't expect that just because the numbers say we're going to deliver a certain result, that every time we're going to guarantee delivering that result. So the first thing is just accepting there is inherent kind of complexity and chaos in the world that we're operating in, and we have to figure out how we navigate that. One way to do that is to have a very good, deep understanding of the broader marketplace. Don't just focus on our movies and our weekends. We analyze every movie, every weekend, in every territory. And we're trying to understand all of the audiences that we can at every level, both in terms of their behaviors, their attitudes, and their demographics. So we're trying to build this kind of complete view. But again, going back to my previous point, there's volatility in the real world. And so we can't expect things to always work out, follow the linear regression that we would like them to. Planning is incredibly important. There's a very deep, Wicked is an example. They were planning that movie before the marketing was being planned before the movie was shot. It's been a very, very long journey, and big franchises like Wicked will have that approach and that treatment. So plan all the way. But then as soon as you get into the campaign and you're actually in the real world, somebody said it's everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Like, you have to respond, and you have to use data and your instincts as well, and your understanding of what's happening in the world. You have to respond. And so you actually have to have an operating framework, a fancy word for saying like a process, that allows you to take make decisions quickly based on the available information, and act confidently when you need to. So I think one of the great things I believe about the Universal Marketing Group is that they are so connected, and that when a situation or event might happen in one part of the country or one part of the world, that signal is very quickly used and responded to, and elevated to the most senior kind of decision makers in the business. So being agile, but having a solid foundation, a solid plan to begin with, I think is essential. And then the final thing, and again, comes back to the nature of the media and the consumer landscapes that we're in today. Lean into this idea of a network effect, right? A network effect, again, is another fancy word for saying kind of virality, like social media, social virality. We've always said that, and we've been saying that for 10 years, that we need to lean into social media virality. But now more than ever, that's not just a nice thing to have. It's now an essential quality of our movies and our marketing, that we bring to every campaign this idea of a kind of a social currency or a social energy, that if that isn't there, intrinsic in what we're doing, then we're gonna find this tough. So it's elevated the idea of a social currency, and ultimately then leaning into that, what I'd call the network effect, leaning into it intentionally and thoughtfully, as part of the campaign, and not just kind of hoping that it happens. So yeah, a few notes from our experiences.
Yeah, it's like elevating to as long as, I mean, until it becomes a culture, right?
Yeah, cultural event. I mean, that's what we aspire to with our movies. Yeah.
And I would like really to come back to this topic and connect it with the Wicked example. And I have a question for you, Laurie, about that, because in fact, of course, in recent years, we've been seeing like the impact of, I mean, the cultural impact of cinema, which becomes like more and more important. And Wicked can be like a standout example, right? Leaning up to its premiere, we saw stars embracing method dressing, followed by a wave of brand collaborations. Like brands, I got some examples like R.E.M. Beauty that generated like over 17 million media impact value from their recent product collaboration. So how do you see universe building such as this, like creating like deeper connection between the entertainment world and the fashion, lifestyle, and beauty industries? What's your perspective on that?
Gosh, I have so many thoughts about this. First, you know, I didn't think any marketing campaign would ever top Barbie. Okay, but Wicked has basically blown it out of the water. It's been crazy. It's really, really been crazy. I thought Barbie was a masterful campaign, but Wicked's topped it. And maybe that has something to do with what Chris was saying about just the planning process, because it really just feels like it just hit so many notes. And, you know, I feel like that's only going to continue. You know, as somebody who, you know, I'm that geek who would sit in movie theaters and notice that Meryl Streep was wearing a Cartier watch. Okay. And, you know, and I would want to do a story. So I'd reach out to Cartier and they'd be like, we didn't loan it. And then I'd reach out to the stylist and the stylist would say, well, actually, I wanted her to wear that watch. This was for the Post, incidentally. I wanted her to wear that watch. So I went out and bought one. You know, so it used to be, you know, that used to be the idea. These days, I can't imagine, you know, a brand like Cartier not jumping in and saying, oh my God, of course I would want Meryl Streep to, you know, wear a watch on screen. So, you know, so it used to be much more behind the scenes, much more, you know, a prop stylist or a stylist, they're just going to go buy something, you know, or, you know, yes, you know, we did arrange a product placement, but we really don't want to talk about it. We want it to feel organic for the viewer. All of that just seems just gone now. Now it's just, you know, out in the open. Everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to take advantage of the money that they have chipped in for the film's budget, you know, be it the marketing budget, you know, whatever. You know, they want to make sure the credit is known. I think another great example of that right now is, you know, Amelia Perez, Saint Laurent, you know, is a producer on, you know, Saint Laurent Productions is a producer on Amelia Perez. And so that's also, you know, that leads to, you know, when you've seen all of the stars of that film on red carpets, you know, guess what? They're all wearing Saint Laurent. That is by design. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, because, you know, everything Saint Laurent does is amazing. So, you know, it's so, but that's the level that we're at now. It's not only much more out in the open, the companies are getting actively involved and they want the credit for it. And I think we're only going to see that continue. My concern is, you know, and Chris definitely can speak to this. My concern as a moviegoer, my concern as a writer who loves literature. I hope I don't see a day where movies are greenlit partly by whether or not they can be successful in this avenue. You know, I hope I won't see, you know, a decline in, for example, World War II movies, because there is no opportunity, or there are fewer opportunities other than maybe like a Hamilton watch, you know, to be part of a marketing campaign for a film in that subject matter. So that's my concern. But, you know, again, Wicked, tremendously successful, built upon, I think, partly built upon the success that everyone saw with Barbie, and so we're only going to see it continue.
Chris, what is your perspective on this concern?
I think we're a long way from that, Laurie, don't worry. I think knowing a little bit about the green light process and how the business makes those decisions, and they are, you know, they are creative decisions foremost. Having great partners on board, I mean, if you can get it in your campaign, that's fantastic. But I think the integrity of the creative and the filmmakers that we work with is always, thankfully, going to be at the top of the list of the things that we go through.
Chris, just to follow up on Wicked, like it was like a very successful rollout. So what do you believe was the key to success here? How do you do to attract like such a broader audience beyond just like the film enthusiast?
Yeah, I think we often, maybe sometimes have to remind ourselves that Wicked was around before this movie, right? That it's a long-standing, very successful stage musical, and really, I think the first step in trying to understand, you know, how do we launch this movie is really going back to its roots and understanding the musical and what it stands for, and the fan base, and you know, the audiences that love it and cherish it for what it is. And so I think a lot of work was done very early on to understand the DNA of what made the musical so successful and continues to make the musical so successful. I think once those kind of core qualities and those kind of key themes were identified, it was really the role of really the marketing to come in. Okay, how do we elevate, you know, these kind of these pillars of what this brand stands for? How do we elevate this? And not just take it to the core fans, who are going to be very important. And there's a lot of them, so that's good news. But how do we go beyond the core fans, right? And how do we reach what we would call the opportunity audience, the biggest potential persuadable audience globally? And I think the creative advertising and the media strategy that was employed was particularly good at just building that solid foundation with what we say is this opportunity audience. I think where partnerships came in, and we've kind of touched on a few of them, but where really the partnerships vehicle kind of played its role was going from being a marketing campaign for a movie to making it a ubiquitous cultural event. Like, if everywhere you look, you keep seeing Wicked, you keep seeing the green and the pink, everywhere you look, you have to stop and think, well, I'm not maybe a regular moviegoer, but this one's got my attention now. And because of this partnership or this brand promotion, I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. So it's kind of creating that kind of sense of ubiquity. And then I think going back to where we started, actually, the talent piece, right? That kind of gives you that kind of momentary cut through. The fact that we can kind of develop these kind of, carefully curated, but authentic and compelling content pieces with our talent. They can take the campaign to that next level. So we've got our brand, we've got a big awareness piece, we've got fantastic partnerships behind us, we've got talent helping us really cut through and be timely and relevant. The final thing that the marketing would have had to have done is remind people that the movie's coming out this weekend and they've got to go this weekend. And so we call that urgency to see the movie. And so from a marketing and an advertising perspective, we will use a lot more conversion-based messaging and kind of targeting and advertising tactics to make sure if you've been primed and you're on board and you're excited about this movie, that you don't forget that it's this weekend and you should go and do what you're going to do. Get dressed up, get in costume, plan your event, organize your trip with your friends or your family or whoever you're going with, and go and see the movie. Because for us, the movies live and die on the opening weekend. And if you don't get a big opening weekend, the theaters, the cinemas are less likely to want to keep you on screens for as long as we'd like to be on screen. So we have to win in the opening weekend. And people are very busy and very distracted today more than ever. So a lot of the marketing was about closing the deal and basically driving conversion, driving ticket sales on the opening weekend.
And based on that success, and this question is for both of you, is there any learnings or takeaway that brands can take in order to somehow replicate the success or like improve the way they process this type of campaign?
We've talked about this before, but I would say, when if you're a brand working with a certain star, just as Chris has been saying, emphasize the immediacy of it all. Michael, you mentioned earlier that, for the power rankings, we track it for 48 hours because, that 48 hours is crucial following an awards show, and, you're going to see a tremendous drop off in conversation at that point. And, in the past, we've discussed examples where, a celebrity waited too long to make an Instagram post, and I think that, if you have the type of relationship with a celebrity where you are able to guide them through what you're seeking, the immediacy has to be top of mind all the time. Just as Chris said about opening weekend, it's about, just hammering home, the immediacy of, an Instagram post, when you're getting in the car and going to the event, not 3 days later, so that would be my one piece of advice for every brand that's working with a celebrity is just immediacy, just really drive it home.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add to that. We're talking about being authentic earlier. I think being organic and being prepared to explore opportunities, creative tactics that maybe don't conform or sit within the established brand playbook for the brand and the advertiser, but finding these opportunities, whether it's with talent or through more integrated, elements of the movie and the marketing, it might not sit comfortably in a presentation that's previously been given and that everybody feels comfortable with and is the way things are done. Sometimes you have to try things differently and experiment and take risks. And being flexible, understanding, yes, there are important brand guardrails that need to be kind of kept within, but equally opportunities to kind of get out there and sometimes promote with a movie campaign. There aren't many of them, and we kind of have to take the opportunities we get, whether it's with talent or with the concepts within the movie itself, kind of lean into those opportunities and ultimately try and identify something that feels organic and authentic and relatable and compelling and ultimately integrated across the campaign.
And if we return to the value of talent, right? Which is like core to this topic, right? I mean, Laurie, what factors do you believe are driving the increasing value of talent, and how do you see this like influencing like brand building efforts across industries? Is there like a kind of magic recipe, or how do you see the trend in the future?
You know, I think primarily it's just that the way we consume entertainment these days has just changed so drastically. And, you know, I think a lot of that is due to the pandemic. You know, we know that certain things were sped up to get into people's homes versus, you know, being on movie screens. But, you know, streaming's just been an enormous driver of not only how we consume entertainment, but also, you know, there once was a time if you were a movie star, you didn't do TV. And if you did TV, you probably wouldn't do movies, you know, and those lines are just gone at this point. You know, years ago it became much more acceptable for movie stars to do television, but streaming, you know, just added a whole other layer of prestige to that idea. And so now it's about, you know, all the, you know, these stars who are in your home, they can be in your home 24/7, 365. You know, if you've got Netflix and Apple TV Plus and, you know, Hulu and everything else, you are consuming entertainment that is just a vast spectrum of Hollywood talent. And so they are also leveraging that popularity with their own projects. And so that's why, I mean, you know, Hollywood Reporter does an entrepreneur's issue every year that discusses just the monumental amount of money that stars earn through their own brands and, you know, the various brands that they partner with and develop. So, you know, again, that's something that I only see growing in the future.
And in terms of brand entertainment, if we connect the dot between the brand, the talent, and the entertainment world, we got a question from the audience. We got two actually. The first one is like, how can brands anticipate what will be a successful campaign? And what are the factors, in your opinion, that they should look for? The idea is to avoid investing in the wrong projects. Do you have any thought about
that? Chris, Michael said
Yeah.
project, so I think if you want to jump in there.
I could take that one. I mean, I can only apply really from my experiences of working in movies and how we go through the kind of the movie and the marketing development approach. So we leverage combinations of qualitative data, right? So we speak to audiences, we speak to consumers, we try and understand their attitudes. We test ideas and concepts early. We try to get a feel for what we think might resonate, what maybe won't resonate, and adapt from that point onwards. We have a deep bench of internal kind of creative expertise that's constantly out there looking at the market, looking at cultural trends, bringing things back into the business, and trying to identify where we think there may be opportunities. So an awful lot of early assessment and kind of opportunity risk analysis is done. But sometimes you've just got to put your big boy pants on and get out there and try and do the job. So then we go and make a movie and you decide you're going to start to market the movie. We have multiple signals that we are using to assess audience interest and engagement around a movie that kick in many months before a movie is released, and we're constantly assessing these signals to determine are we heading in the right direction, or are we falling off the path. I think one of the things that works so well at Universal is the connectivity between what our research group is learning from speaking to consumers and what our analytics group is learning from observing behaviors of consumers. And we kind of bring the attitudes and the behaviors together, and that's shared to the most senior levels of the business and is openly discussed on a regular basis. Are we heading in the right direction? So it's a little bit like trying to catch a tennis ball. Like, the human being is incredible. Like, we were our brains and how we can kind of make the decision of where do we put our hand, move a little bit closer, open your hand. Okay, your tennis ball's about to get to where you need it. And then you start to close your fist and you capture the tennis ball. You didn't sit back 10 seconds earlier and do some kind of calculation that perfectly predicted where you needed to be. You just put your hand out and moved towards the ball and grabbed it. And that's very much, I think, a good metaphor for movies and movie marketing, in that you've just got to lean in, make constant adjustments, and keep your eye on the prize, because it's going to keep moving, and if you take your eye off it, you're going to miss it.
Yep, I totally agree with that. Laurie, maybe the next one is for you. It's we mentioned like the evolution due to the streaming. Today it seems that stars are taking a more hands-on approach. Do you think this makes their influence stronger? What does it change in the nature of brand collaborations? Again, it's a question from the audience.
You know, it's a mutual relationship. You know, the brand is getting something out of the celebrity is getting something out of the brand, but ultimately, it is that celebrity's face, it is that celebrity's comment. You know, it's their image, and you know, they own their image, and so of course they should have a hands-on approach to a collaboration. I would hope that it's respectful on both sides. You know, you hear stories all the time about difficulties and that sort of thing, but you know, I think that, you know, any celebrity who is actively responsible for their own image, you know, if they're not hands-on about these collaborations, then they're only doing themselves a disservice, while at the same time, I feel like that, you know, anything that comes out of that collaboration is, you know, also not going to ring true, that it may feel false. Because again, you know, going back to one of our favorite words during this conversation, you know, you can't fake authenticity. And so, you know, all those factors have to play a role. But I would never discourage anyone from, you know, being hands-on in any project that involved either their name or their image or both.
Yes, to really conclude on that authenticity and creativity topic, and just like before we close, I would like to hear your thought, both of you, on this. Like, as industries like entertainment and fashion continue to intersect, what do you believe is the most important lessons or takeaway we can take from the way data and creativity are just shaping these sectors? And how can brand and creatives also work together to try to navigate this landscape that is like evolving all the time, moving forward?
Laurie, go.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think, you know, we are really only getting started in all of this. You know, like I said, you know, like I said earlier, you know, stars and influence and luxury brands is nothing new. But I think that, you know, as we move forward, you know, maybe maybe we'll go back to the days, you know, George Clooney with his Nespresso commercial. He's still a bit of an anomaly in the industry, but you know, in terms of, you know, starring in his own commercial and sort of tweaking, you know, making fun of himself a little bit, you know, maybe we're going to see a lot more of those moving forward, that it's not just, you know, Matthew McConaughey driving a cool car, that you know, that it's just more about these little stories that give you more insight into a star's personality. And then just as far as again, the projects and how they play a role in films marketing budgets, you know, again, it's been monumentally successful, and you know, that only means that we're going to see it continue.
I think from my perspective, if we're thinking about the collaboration between kind of brand partners and movies and the marketing, it goes back to some of our earlier points, but there's so much kind of uncertainty in what a movie might do in the marketplace that we operate within. There's always going to be, you know, a financial target that both the partner and the movie and the studio is aiming towards, and we kind of, you know, eyes wide open in terms of what that means. But, you know, in order to I think, to move forward and to develop a partnership and to commit to doing things that maybe are a little bit out of the norm. It really helps to have an agreement on the metrics that matter, right? The metrics for the success along the way, not just the final revenue piece, but where do we want to be at this point in the campaign together, and what we're going to use a short list of metrics, 2 or 3 metrics. Which ones are we going to use, and are we going to agree that these are the right metrics to measure our success and potentially respond to if we feel we're not where we need to be? And so I think part of the session today and knowing a little bit about what Launchmetrics does, it's bringing that data into the conversations in the partnership and saying, okay, well, are we doing what we're thinking we need to do here? And we work with many different partners around the world, and everybody has a slightly different perspective on what to value and what matters. And so I think having that conversation at the very beginning of the partnership is essential to make sure there's no ambiguity and confusion at the 11th hour and the movie's about to release, but maybe the partner isn't where they would want to be, or maybe they are and the movie's going to go on and do $100+ million and we'll all be very happy. But yeah, alignment on the metrics, a very data thing to end the session on, but I think it's absolutely crucial.
Thank you again. Really a big thank to you, fantastic panelists like Chris, Laurie. Thank you for sharing your expertise and perspective. It's clear to me that these industries are constantly evolving, and the conversion we had today, just beginning of, I would say, a much larger dialogue. Thank you for sharing that. I would like also, because it is like the closing of this summit, to thank all of our brilliant and talented speakers through today. And lastly, I would like to thank you, to thank all of our audience. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being present. Thank you for all the questions, and we hope that you walk away with a lot of valuable lessons and takeaways. Stay engaged, keep exploring, and we really look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day, and thank you again, Chris and Laurie.
Thanks,
everyone.
Michael.
Bye.